live right now. Sorry to interrupt.
We are
Secretary.
live.
Okay, all right.
We're live now, and if Ben wants to gavel us in so we're official, that would be great.
Okay.
All right. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to the April 24th special meeting of the Kentucky State Board of Elections. Obviously, we're meeting by video conference instead of meeting in person. In case any of you all missed it, we've got a pandemic going on, and it is causing us to meet in an unusual way. So we'll try to make the best of it. If you all are like me, I much prefer meeting in person, and this has been very difficult on me because I like being around folks. And again, we'll just do the best that we can. I am Ben Chandler. I am presently the chairman of the State Board of Elections, and we've got a number of people on this call with us, and I'd like everybody to please identify themselves and what their role is. And I will start with members of the Board of Elections. George.
Yes, George Russell, member, Franklin County.
Corey.
Corey Skolnick, member, Jefferson County.
Deanna.
Deanna Brangers, member, Jefferson County.
Dwight.
Dwight Sears, member, Pulaski County.
Sherry.
Sherry Whitehouse, member, Bullitt County.
Katrina.
Katrina Fitzgerald, member for retired county clerks.
And James.
James Lewis, retired county clerk member.
We also have our Secretary of State with us, Michael.
Glad to be here.
Michael Adams, nice to have you, also a member of the board. We have with us Jared Deering, who is the executive director of the board. We also have our, I guess, Karen, your title is the deputy director.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. We have Renisa Abner with us. Renisa is the president of the State County Clerks Association from Henderson County, Kentucky. I might add, a very great county in Kentucky. And we have also with us Katrina Beckley, who is the financial officer, I suppose, of the State Board of Elections. And we have Taylor Brown, the general counsel of the State Board. Have I left anybody out?
Secretary?
He got me.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
All right, we have two sets of minutes to approve. I assume that everybody has very carefully read these minutes, and I will accept a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Who made the motion?
Deanna.
Motion by Deanna Brangers and a second by Sherry Whitehouse. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very
Aye.
good. And we'll just assume that that was for both sets of minutes. Our next item on the agenda is a ratification of county boards of election replacements pursuant to KRS 117.035. Jared?
Thank you. What we're looking for is ratification here. These are board members on the county level that we need to have in place by the election, obviously. But we have, by tradition, always selected the candidate that is on the top of that list, and I recommend we do the same and ask the board to ratify.
Do I have a motion?
So
Yes,
moved.
Motion
and
by
second,
Deanna
and
Brown.
second.
Who
George is
seconded?
second.
George?
Yes.
And a second by George Russell. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is Katrina Beckley, our finance officer. Katrina, can you do your thing?
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, we will start with our operating expenses for February. For utilities, we spent $161.91. For rentals, we spent $1,163.61. Maintenance was $0. Postage, $654.88. Miscellaneous, $6,896.25. Telecommunications, $350. Computer services, $21,247.02. Supplies, $1,596.71. Furniture and equipment, $5,658.68. Travel, $0. Other expenses, $247. Are there any particular questions on those expenses?
I guess
I,
miscellaneous and furniture and equipment probably
Okay.
are the two that kind of stand out.
Okay, for miscellaneous, we ordered the SBE 31 voter assistant form from Kentucky Correctional Industries. That was $6,608.50 for those. We ordered 40,000 of them. Then Republic Services for our garbage removal was $235. And AOC, we paid for our CourtNet license was $52.75 for a 6-month license. And that's for miscellaneous. Furniture and equipment, those are actually COT pass-through charges. I have sent a ticket out to have them tell me exactly what that is, but I have yet to receive a response. So I just kind of have to wait till they get back, and I could actually email you all if you would like, once I find out exactly what those are for. Any additional questions?
Hi, Katrina, what are the rentals that are
Mhm.
not the quarterly rentals for the property?
Those are the 2 Xerox machines that we have in the building. 2 months, a month each for each copy machine.
Thanks.
Any additional questions? Okay. We can move on to the 1099 reportables out of operating for February. For legal services, we spent $4,062.50. $0 on consulting services. $519.50 for security guard services. $410 for janitorial services. And $3,388.94 for temporary manpower services. Additional questions on those? Okay.
I'm guessing the legal services probably will decline now that we have Taylor. Over time, those will go down probably.
I assume that they will too, yes. And we're actually almost paid out completely on that contract, so we'll have to come to a point to see if we need to add any more money to it.
If I could too, I think one of the things we had discussed is MMLK is currently counsel on an existing case that hasn't ended yet. And I'm thinking that we might keep them on through the term of that case to see that through. But I know we've also had discussions about possibly bringing on outside counsel from representation from the Attorney General's office. I think we had a conversation about that maybe 6 or 7 months ago. It hadn't really come up since, but I think we might want to continue looking at that as an option to have Taylor backed up by a member of the Attorney General's staff that would work at behest of the board, not the Attorney General. But that's been something that the board has done in the past, is working with the Attorney General with an MOU. That attorney that the Attorney General would provide us would work on behest of the board, but add as an extra resource for us. So it might be something I just want to touch point with the board just to make sure that we're thinking about it as we move forward.
Thanks.
All right, so I'll move on to the 1201 expenses. We spent $74,920.85. We earned interest of $6,660.93. Of those expenses, the COT email account, $6. The AT&T MiFi devices, $8,676.74. Tech systems, $54,077.50. And that is for 5 contractors. Latitude, 1 contractor, $10,736. Out-of-state travel, $668.06. That was NASED in January and February. American Express, $756.55. And again, that was the hotel for NASED in January and February. Any questions? All right, we can move to the cumulative, oh, sorry. Does somebody have a question?
Actually, if I could chime in real quick, I just want to make sure that it's Ben, I think we didn't make a public statement at the beginning of the meeting. Sheila Walker, which is our board secretary, is also taking minutes right now. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that as well. That Sheila is, while not on video, she is in the background listening and covering minutes for the board. Sorry to interrupt.
All right. We
Very
can,
good. Thank you, Sheila.
we can continue with the cumulative totals for federal and state match. Title I, we have $8,594,874.74. Total Title II, we have $9,180,722.58. Total state match, $438,171.73. Total Title I, Title II, and state match, we have $18,213,769.05. The MOA with the counties have a remaining balance of $1,129,887, leaving an available balance of $17,083,882.05. Any questions? If y'all ready, we can move to the March expenses. For operating utilities, $1,172.90. Rentals, $1,114.37. Maintenance, $0. Postage, $308.88. Miscellaneous, $587.32. Telecommunications, $2,115.99. Computer services, $0. Supplies, we have a credit of $16.42. Furniture and equipment, $0. Travel, $570.38. And other expenses, $25.30. Does anybody have any questions?
That seems to be the smallest month that I've seen in a long time.
It really is. We did have COT charges because they have, it looks like they've split them. Some came out last month. And so I expect next month to be a little higher. And that's a big chunk of our bill is those COT charges.
It also I might point out, coincides with you all not being in the office very much.
Yeah, that could have something to do with it too. Okay, we can move on to the 1099 reportables for the month of March. For legal services, we spent $3,850.74. For consulting services, $0. Security guard services, $0. Janitorial, $410. And temporary manpower services, $2,410.96. Questions on any of those charges? Okay. Our 1201 expenses, we spent $53,131.96. We earned interest of $6,750.96. COT email, $6. Software House International, $4,134.56. That was our Component 1 license renewal. We do that annually. Tech Systems, $39,471.40. That was for 4 contractors. Latitude 36, 1 contractor, $9,520. Any specific questions? Okay. To our cumulative totals for federal and state match. Title I, $8,548,493.74. Total Title II, $9,229,181.12. Total state match, $440,483.15. Total Title I, Title II, and state match, $18,218,158.01. MOA with county's remaining balance, $1,128,250.50, leaving an available balance of $17,089,907.51. And we did have a few payments, if you all noticed, the MOA remaining balance to county. So that's the first we've had in a while. That's a good thing, getting that money spent. Any more particular questions? I just like to say thank you.
All right. Katrina, thank you for that report. And for those of you all who are not aware, Katrina will be leading the Board of Election staff. Katrina, we are very grateful for all of your wonderful service that you've given over the years. We're going to miss you tremendously. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for leaving, but but I certainly understand, and you're not going very far away, so we'll be able to see you on a regular basis. But it's been a joy and a pleasure to have the opportunity to work with you, and I'm sure that we all very much wish you the best.
Thank you. I do appreciate it. And I have enjoyed the last 5.5 years, and it was a hard decision, but like you say, I'm going to be close, so it'll be okay. I'll still see everybody, and I appreciate everything you all have all done for me over the years as well.
And I would like to second that, our appreciation, Katrina, and how much, work you do here and how much you will be missed. I will say, for those who don't know, Katrina will be joining KREF, which is our sister agency. And I have told their executive director we will be trying to poach as many of their staff members as we possibly can in the future to get even. But the silver lining here is Katrina will still be available to us in the office. Again, we share an office with KREF, and so the knowledge base that Katrina has built will still be here for us from time to time if we do need her. But we'll start the process and trying to fill her very large shoes as soon as we can. Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you all.
Very good. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda. It has to do with our emergency reg that we've been talking about, and I think maybe it's a good idea to just give a little bit of background on this. We, as I think everybody knows, have been facing some decisions about how to hold the primary election, the upcoming primary election, in the face of this pandemic. And the concerns have been, for the most part, twofold: that we keep our poll workers and our voters safe and make sure that we guard their health, and that we provide access to all Kentuckians, all registered voters, to the ballot box. And we've been trying to talk about a way to get that done. To that end, the Secretary of State and the governor made a decision some weeks ago to move the election from its normal May date to June 23rd, pursuant to statute. But one of the things that was not clear after that move was made was how the election itself would be conducted. So we now have to decide how the election will be conducted. The legislature, before they left town, passed a new law which called for the Secretary of State and the governor to jointly determine the manner of the election. And we have been in discussions, the state board, a working group, the County Clerks Association, the Secretary of State, and the governor's staff have all been in close consultation about how to move forward on this election. And that is what we're going to take up today, the method and the manner of the June 23rd primary election. And with that, maybe Jared, I can turn it over to you if you've got any comments.
Certainly. Thank you, Chairman Chandler. I think I'd like to start first and foremost by acknowledging my gratitude for the leadership that's been shown by both Governor Bashir as well as Secretary Adams. I think that, you know, their work together and their ability to come to a cohesive agreement in a very collegial and amicable way shows the level of professionalism of the executive branch that we have in our Commonwealth. And I think that it bodes well for the state moving forward into this next election cycle. Both the staff on the governor's side as well as Secretary of State's side have worked diligently and hard to produce something I think is a fair compromise of ideas and values that both bring safety to the election as well as security and effectiveness, allowing for us to move forward. So that being said, maybe what I could start with is the governor has just signed an executive order this morning directly before the board meeting started. So perhaps I can read an excerpt of that to kind of give a little bit of guidance to the board before we start talking about our administrative regulation. That will be emailed to the full board if it already has not already. We'll get that out to you. So it states, I, Andy Bashir, Governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, by virtue and authority vested in me by the Constitution of Kentucky and KRS Chapter 39A, do by here order and direct as follows. All Kentuckians should utilize absentee voting by mail for the June 23rd, 2020 primary election if they are able to do so. 2, the State Board of Elections shall promulgate emergency regulations to provide for such expanded absentee voting by mail. The State Board of Elections shall, among other changes, create a secure online portal that will allow voters to request that the absentee ballot be mailed to them. The State Board of Elections shall send a postcard to each registered voter informing voters of the ability and the process to vote by absentee by mail in the June 23rd, 2020 primary election. 3, the State Board of Elections shall take all reasonable steps to ensure the safety of county clerks and poll workers when directing voting not by mail is necessary, including but not limited to A, permitting in-person absentee voting to begin on June 8th, 2020, B, directing clerks to prioritize such voters by appointment, C, providing adequate personnel, protective equipment, and materials to assist in proper sanitization of clerks and poll workers, and D, instructing county clerks to implement procedures that limit direct contact between individuals, whether poll workers or voters. Such procedures shall promote a method of voting such as drive-through voting, whereby poll workers do not come in contact with voters. 4, the State Board of Elections shall promulgate such additional emergency regulations as are necessary to ensure Kentuckians can safely exercise their right to vote in the June 23rd, 2020 primary election, while protecting the safety of Kentucky's county clerks and poll workers. The additional regulations shall be consistent with the April 23rd, 2020 recommendations of Secretary Adams, which are incorporated by reference herein. The regulation shall be subject to further approval by required law. So that is kind of the executive order that's been provided to us by the governor. I thank him and his staff for that. As stated in that document, the secretary and his staff have provided recommendations as well, which I believe you all have copies of. And I will leave that to him to make public on his website or through his press advisor. Are there any questions about that specifically before we move forward? Okay.
Jared,
Yes.
I would just like to reaffirm that the goals of this thing are to keep people safe and to make sure that everybody gets to vote. And I want to also say that it's been an absolute joy to see everybody working so closely together on both sides of the aisle. You know, this is an issue that has been contentious all across the country. And in my opinion, we are blessed on this board and in this state to have folks both in elected leadership positions like our governor and our secretary of state, and people on this board who work very well together and who are interested in making sure that the goals are achieved in the best possible way and that we move forward on this thing together. The bipartisanship has been excellent, and I am very grateful to everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. It does make me proud to be a Kentuckian today. Like this is one of those things. I know that probably sounds hokey to say, but it's true that, you know, it's in our motto, you know, united we stand. And that's, you know, one of the things that I think is being shown here, that this election can be safe and secure and successful because of the work of both the staff and the Secretary of State and the governor and this board. So I appreciate that very much.
Well, and this is a very important decision to make. This is not a casual undertaking. When you change the manner of your election from one end of this great commonwealth to the other, when you've got so many moving parts, when you've got 120 county clerks who have to put this the election into effect on the ground, it takes a whole lot of people coming together to pick the right kind of way. And I appreciate everybody making an effort. A good faith effort. I hope that we have come up with a good solution. I don't know if this is, I don't guess we're prepared to vote on this yet, but if the Secretary of State has anything to say about this, maybe this is the proper moment for you to make some comments, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman Chandler. First off, I want to say how grateful I am to Governor Beshear for working with me in good faith on this. We've been bipartisan in this board, and the governor was extraordinarily gracious in working with me, addressing my concerns, listening to my concerns, and I certainly made every effort to reciprocate that. This is a really good agreement. I'm very proud of it. As you saw in the order, it's not it's very short as it should be. It incorporates recommendations that I made. All of those recommendations are ones that he's agreed to. So ultimately, the final document produced by this board in the form of one or more regulations that will be consistent with the terms of the recommendations I made, as well as the instructions of the governor and the executive order. But I'm very, very proud that this process has worked so well. We don't want to be the next Wisconsin in several respects. One of those is I don't actually see Russia as the biggest threat to our elections right now. I see partisanship as the greatest threat to our elections, gamesmanship between different branches of government going after each other, kicking the can, waiting to the last minute to decide what the process is going to be, and then disenfranchising voters. That's not what we've done today. We've acted 2 months in advance to reach a deal that provides clarity to Kentuckians. So the clerks, our voters, everybody who's affected knows what the rules of the game are and that they're agreed to by both sides. So this is a great day for democracy.
Wonderful. Should we take questions at this point, Jared, from the members of the board?
If you want, or we can do one of two things. Either if you would like to discuss questions, or I can read into the minutes, kind of the general sections of the regulations that we're speaking about, so the general public has an idea of what we're talking about. Or we can ask questions and then do that. But at any rate, one way or the other, I think we should read into the minutes just kind of what we're talking about.
Well, I don't think there's any question, but that we need to give a good outline of exactly how we're going to propose that this thing works for the June 23rd election. So why don't you do that, Jared, and then we'll take questions from the board. And I'd also like to hear from the county clerks and get their view on this. And Renisa, will be calling on you for that, if you don't mind, in just a moment.
And perhaps just for to be able to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to voice concerns on the whole entire document. If you want to interrupt me as I'm reading through it, please do so. We can address any concern you might have at a specific time in that section as I read through it. Thank you.
Hey, Jared, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
Would you, and this is for Chairman Chandler too, do you envision that the best process to follow is for us to discuss this conceptually and then recess and then come back on a vote on a final regulation once everyone has a chance to read everything material here? What would you suggest we do?
Well, I would have hoped that everybody had already read it and digested it, but if people need, if people need more time, certainly we can do that.
I'm open to either.
Speaking for myself, I'd like a little bit of time to wordsmith a bit. As you can imagine, I've been busy on other fronts. I just haven't had time to go through it as thoroughly as I'd like. I don't want to kick the can, obviously. I think we can all agree that this is the process moving forward, and we can notice that we need to affected parties. But in terms of actually voting on a final version of the wording, maybe we could recess and come back later today or something if that's agreeable to people. I just want to make sure we get the wording exactly right, because the last thing I want is to have to come back and revisit it.
Well, I think that I'm not sure, Jared, that we have all of the wording, do we? I mean, I think there may be some things that, technically speaking, may have to be flexible.
So I guess my request would be this, that, and maybe this fits both the secretary's needs as well as the board's needs. What we might be able to do is if I read you the first draft, and again, what I sent you last night was definitely a draft, and it's something I want to have open for discussion. There's a couple of questions that I have on a couple of the dates that I know the secretary and I have been discussing as well. What we might want to do is provide an overall framework of what this looks like, provide the bulk of the work in the draft form, and then discuss a few points. And then if the board can ratify that, myself and Secretary Adams can continue to work on refining the specific details in the, not like in the broad strokes, but in the fine details of the, like grammar and some of the wordsmithing and potentially a couple of the dates. But as long as the board has a broad consensus of what we're looking at, if it's okay with the board, you can direct me to then sign that. The executive order is to be signed by myself and then the governor, at which point it then goes back to the secretary and governor for final approval. So there's still a little time to allow a little bit of movement on this, but I think if we can vote on the broad strokes today, that would be ideal, as long as that works for Secretary Adams as well.
That's certainly fine with me, Jared. One final point, and then I'll let you move forward. This is special attention to Katrina and James and Renisa. There are some dates in here. I'd like your feedback on whether those dates are the right ones, whether we should move them at all. To give you just one example, what is the final date on which we will accept a ballot that is postmarked as of election day? Obviously, the election has to end at some point. We have to count the votes and certify them. How much time do we give people? Really, how much time do we give the Postal Service to deliver a ballot before we cut off the count? So that's the kind of technicality that although my recommendation is fairly specific, I'm certainly able to deviate from that if we think that we need to adjust some of those minutia. So I certainly want to throw that open for your discussion as we get into the weeds.
Well, I think certainly we want to get it right. We want to get the dates right. We want to get all of the details right as best we can. I personally don't foresee us having too many difficulties on some of those details. And if it's all right with everybody, I would prefer to try to get a broad outline voted on today. I think we're very close to that. And then if for some reason, and then give Jared the authority and of course, instruct him, Mr. Secretary, as the Chief Election Officer, to work with you on some of the language. But then if we need to ratify any of the details, we can certainly call a very quick special meeting and do that. If not, then maybe we can just plow ahead. But I think we'd be very much open to, if any details need to be worked out that there might be an issue with, or that we feel like we need to ratify, certainly we would be open to that.
That sounds great to me. And of course, once we have Jared with the authority, he can work with me and certainly with the governor's office as well to make sure that the final product is consistent with our wishes jointly.
I think that'd be great.
And I think maybe for the board's sake, so the board doesn't feel that it's left out, what my hope here is we can identify a couple of the, I wouldn't call them pain points, but a couple of the things that are dates that are in question, let's just say on what the best practice should be for those specific details. If we can identify them and give a range of kind of what the expectation is of what that change would be, and then have the board be comfortable with anything within that range, and then allow the secretary and I to work that out at the meeting. And of course, I'll defer to the secretary as well. Then the board can allow us to sign this on their behalf, as long as they've approved by full vote that they are okay with the structure and range of the questions that we presented. I think that would be appropriate. So that way we're not changing anything structurally or anything that would be an unknown that the board had never heard or seen, and then all of a sudden that's public without the board having notice. I think that would be, if that's okay with everyone.
I think that'd be great, Jared. What I'd like to do, if possible, is if you could go ahead and give us the broad outline and make sure that that it's clear to any members of the general public who are listening in on this. We certainly want to make sure that this decision is as transparent as it can possibly be and as well understood as it can possibly be. But I'd also, when you finish, like to provide plenty of opportunity for every board member to engage in questioning and discussion, a full discussion of any issues that any of you might have on this plan. We need to have today. So with that, can you go ahead and give the outline of what we intend to do?
Yes, hang on one second.
Jared, if you will, name the page number when you're talking about the items. If you don't mind, name the page number so we can kind of follow.
All right, here we go. So I will be starting on page 2, which starts with section 1, line 1. Section 1, all provisions outlined in this emergency administrative regulation shall apply to the Commonwealth's June 23rd elections only. And again, just this is going to be one of those places where I stop and say this might be something we need to communicate further on as well, which is I think we need to insert language that also covers the special election in the 26th Senate District as well, to make sure that both of those elections are covered, and that way after the fact someone can't come back and say, well, you didn't enumerate that specifically for the 26th special election. So I think we might want to insert that language in, if that's okay with the board and secretary.
Yeah, I think I would simply say the primary, special, and local option elections planned for June 23rd, something like that. It's all inclusive. I think they're all 3 actually occurring on that day.
Could we do all elections occurring on June 23rd? Would that cover?
Sure.
Okay. I'll have Taylor work on that language. Any existing laws or administrative regulations inconsistent with this emergency administrative regulation shall be suspended as to the June 23rd, 2020 elections. All terms used herein shall have the same definitions as currently stated in Kentucky Revised Statutes and Kentucky Administrative Regulations. Section 2, line 7. The State Board of Elections shall send a non-forwarding postcard to every registered voter of the Commonwealth to inform them of the changes being made to the June 23rd, 2020 elections as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the steps the voter must take to request an absentee ballot through the SBE secure online portal or by calling their county clerk. The postcard shall have a return address of the State Board of Elections, and any postcard returned as undeliverable or with a forwarding address will be tracked, and the process for list maintenance established on KRS 116.112 shall be followed. All UACAVA and overseas voting will take place as prescribed by federal law. These voters will receive a notification postcard. Section 3. The State Board of Elections shall establish a secure online portal that will allow voters to request an absentee ballot through the submission of personally identifiable information. The information given by the voter on the portal shall serve as an absentee application. The secure online portal shall transmit the request to the county clerk of the county in which the requester is registered to vote. The county clerk shall be responsible for determining if the request is valid. The State Board of Elections shall deliver to county clerks a unique barcode for each voter's ballot, providing the ability to track the ballot as it's mailed out and received back in order to certify the movement of the ballot through the postal system to issue voter credit. I want to be clear on this specific part right here. We're not talking about putting a barcode on the ballot itself. We're talking about putting barcodes on the absentee envelopes. So there are, when an absentee ballot goes out to the voter, there are 3 envelopes that it's encased in. There's an outer envelope, an inner envelope, and a security envelope. The outer envelope contains the entire packet, including information and the ballot itself that's mailed to the voter. The voter then pulls that out. They set aside the inner envelope and the security envelope with the flap on it. They fill their ballot out. They insert the ballot into the security envelope and sign the outer flap. They then insert the security envelope in the inner envelope, and then they mail that back to the county clerk. All 3 of those envelopes will have a barcode on them, but not the ballot itself. So I want to make sure that's very clear, so that, voters understand that we're still taking the secrecy of the ballot and the sanctity of that as seriously as we do in all elections.
Now, Jared, I think maybe you ought to just give a general, in lay language, explanation of what this part of the process means.
Certainly.
Like we're going to we're sending postcards to all voters, to 3.4 million voters, and just take it from there if you don't mind.
So just to reiterate, this is not this is a summation of kind of what we're talking about in layman's terms. If a voter, so every voter in the Commonwealth, 3.4 million voters roughly, will receive a postcard in the mail in the coming weeks. That postcard will have on it the website that will be run by the State Board of Elections that will allow for a secure way for voters to log in, provide personal information. We're going to ask for their social security number, a driver's license if they have one, although that's not required, their date of birth. We're also going to ask for email and phone number. That will ultimately aid us in calling or notifying the voter if there is a problem with their ballot to make sure that they can come in and fix that problem. For instance, if their signature doesn't match, that will give them the ability to make sure that ballot counts. Once they apply online for that absentee ballot, everyone will be applying under a medical excuse. So I think that's important for everyone to understand, that they don't have to check a box to determine what excuse they're filing an absentee ballot under. They are all filing them under the medical excuse as prescribed by the executive order. The county clerk will then approve that application as they currently do now. So we're not changing that process. We're only streamlining it for the voter and the clerk. When the clerk approves that, they will then put the ballot packet together. That again includes those 3 envelopes that I was speaking of, plus instructions, plus the ballot. They'll mail that to the voter. The voter will open that up, cast their ballot, or vote their ballot, put that back in the security envelope, sign the outer flap of the security envelope, and the instructions will state this clearly. Mail that back to the county clerk's office. By putting barcodes on every envelope, what we allow for is the streamlining of that process that allows us to track those ballots in the system itself, both from a security perspective, as well as a way to aid the voter in knowing when their ballots have been received, when they come back. It tells us as a state board that the voter has been sent their ballot. We'll also be able to track when that ballot comes back. We'll also be able to track when their signature is validated and matched by the county Board of Elections or a processing committee appointed by the county board. Does that make sense?
Just to be clear, Jared, every single voter, some 3.4 million voters in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, will have the ability to vote absentee.
Yes.
And they will not have to provide an excuse. That excuse is essentially being provided by the medical emergency that we've got statewide relative to this pandemic.
That is correct. And I think it's important for the board to understand as well is that What I believe Secretary Adams and the governor have worked on is a process that ultimately is not changing Kentucky voting processes. The state has always had an absentee mail process. That's something the clerks understand. The only thing we're doing is adding a web portal to make that process, the application process, a little easier. But again, we're also adding extra security controls in here, including signature validation on the backside, asking for a social security number on the front side to be able to log into that portal. But we're also providing opportunity for voters that if they don't have an internet or computer, that postcard will also state the phone number for their local county clerk, at which point that individual can call their county clerk and they will walk them through the application process, ensuring that they also have access to the ballot. But this does cover all Kentuckians that are eligible to vote, that are registered. If anything, we're actually encouraging as many people as possible to utilize this as the form and method of their voting. We're going to ask people to do their civic duty here in requesting an absentee ballot through the portal that will help the clerk in making sure that they don't get bottlenecked on these applications. And then we're going to ask them to fill that out and mail that back to us. That'll also help in the process, and that'll help keep Kentuckians safe. It'll help keep their families safe. It'll help keep poll workers and administrators safe. And I think that's the one thing we want to really emphasize here. Any questions? Okay. We are back on page 3, line 4. Notwithstanding the availability of the secure online portal, a registered voter may request an absentee ballot using traditional method of request as well. Section 4, line 7. A voter must request a mailed absentee ballot from the county clerk of that voter's residence by 11:59 Eastern, June 15th, 2020. Any voter desiring an absentee ballot after June 15th, 2020 shall contact their county clerk in order to obtain a ballot. One thing I wanted to point out here is that what we're saying in this is that we're asking that the voters who are requesting an absentee ballot by mail, that they have to request one by June 15th. This allows the county clerk to be able to place one of those in the mail and assure that it arrives at the voter's address in time for the voter to be able to fill that out and send it back. However, if a voter exceeds that June 15th time, and I think this is another one of those things that we're going to continue to ask Kentuckians to do their civic duty by not waiting to fill these out. The sooner that they do this process, the more they can guarantee and ensure that their ballot will be cast effectively, and do so in a way in which that doesn't clog the system up so that other voters also have an opportunity to cast their ballots. But voters, if they elapse that June 15th date, they still have the ability to request an absentee ballot. It just can't be mailed to them at that point. So our recommendation, while I wouldn't call it vague, but it's flexible. What we're saying is that the voter contact their county clerk to receive a absentee ballot at that point. Our thought process is in leaving it flexible is that in some cases, the county clerk will be able to build that packet for them. So the 3 envelopes that they would typically mail in, and then the voter can drive up curbside and have that ballot picked up. That will limit the amount of people coming into clerk's offices. It'll keep clerks safe and their employees safe. It could be that there are some counties that have drive-through windows that they can do that. There are other counties that have told me that they want to set up a couple of places where they have parking lots where voters can pull up and drive up and receive their ballot that way and then return it. So there will be plenty of options for voters to pick up that absentee ballot after June 15th. We're just asking that voters do so if they want to receive one in the mail before June 15th. Going back. So line 9, no reason for requesting or casting absentee ballot should be required for a voter, for that voter to obtain or cast an absentee ballot, as all voters are deemed to be experiencing a medical emergency as described in KRS 117-077, given the state of public health emergency declared by the governor. Upon application, voters will not be required to state that the emergency condition occurred within the 14 days of the election or notarize their application. Each applicant, upon verification of their application, shall be entitled to vote absentee, by mail, or in person by appointment if otherwise a lawful voter. All ballots returned to the United States Postal Service must be postmarked no later than June 23rd. All ballots delivered by the United States Postal Service shall be received by the ballot processing committee no later than 6 p.m. June 26th. If I can pause here for a moment, these are two dates that I think the secretary referenced and that I also wanted to reference. I think the question here is if a ballot envelope is postmarked June 23rd, the suggestion is that it should count as long as it's arrives at the county clerk's office. In the first draft, we have June 26th. In doing some more research, there is, in a further section, we talk about signature curing, which is if a signature does not match, the County Board of Elections can challenge that signature and then notify the voter, allowing that voter to come in and verify their signature. We'll do that through an email process, more than likely, to make sure that we're not having more additional people come into the clerk's offices. But the problem with this is if we allow for ballots to come back at a certain point, much like the secretary said, there has to be a cutoff. We have to certify the election. I will work personally with the USPS. As a matter of fact, I have a conference call with them later this afternoon to discuss some of these issues and making sure that the ballots are being handled properly, that return mail dates are being set properly, and that they're being cleared out of the mail houses in an effective manner to be received back to the county clerk. However, I think the question here is this: is if a ballot is cast, it has a June 23rd date on it. My suggestion is actually that we move it to June 27th. And again, I'll work with the secretary on this as well if you have different feelings about this. That would place it on the Saturday. That will give the voter 5 days for that envelope to come back. I've been told by USPS that that should cover the majority of all the continental US for voters to cast their ballot by election day and have that be arriving at the county clerk's office. If we have a June 27th cutoff, what that then allows for is the signature cure method to have that cutoff be June 29th, which is the following Monday, with the elections being certified on the 30th, with a full day for the clerks to be able to certify that and cast and count all ballots cast. But that's definitely a date that I wanted to come back to and circle around once I've completed this for your further discussion. Line 19, page 3, ballots not returned through the Postal Service may be returned via hand delivery to the local county clerk's office or a location deemed appropriate by the local county board of election no later than 6 p.m. local time, June 23rd. So while voters can place their ballots in the mail with a postmark of June 23rd, they can also drop them off to the county clerk. But if they're dropping them off by hand without a postmark, they must be delivered by 6 p.m. local time, June 23rd on election day. Page 4, section 5, line 3. On or before the end of business, June 16th, each county clerk shall mail an absentee ballot to every registered voter in their jurisdiction who has requested such. Again, this is something we might need to put a little bit of changed language in. I believe if we say each county clerk shall make reasonable effort to mail an absentee ballot to every registered voter in their jurisdiction who has requested such. The problem is that if we have a deadline of midnight, allowing for the voter to request an absentee ballot to be mailed to them, we're effectively giving the clerks a day to turn those around for the ones that came in that night previous. If that is the last night, we could see a pretty big spike of procrastinators, voters who just waited until that last minute and are requesting an absentee ballot that very last day they're allowed to, for them to be mailed to them. And my concern is if we see hypothetically a spike of 100,000, the clerks would then have to turn those around in less than 24 hours. So I think if we make language here that says make reasonable effort, that should cover the ability for us to have a ministerial role saying that if an applicant has applied for an absentee ballot, you need to mail that to them timely. But it also covers the clerks if there is that spike at that last minute in effectively processing all of those applications out and putting those ballots in the mail. Section 6, line 7, beginning with the promulgation of this temporary emergency regulation through 6 p.m. local time, June 23rd, each county clerk shall accept absentee ballots from registered voters of that county at a drop-off location, either inside of the county clerk's office or at a location deemed appropriate by the local county board of election. The county clerk shall notify the voters requesting an absentee ballot of any other location in the county where absentee ballots shall be permitted to be returned. At each location for absentee ballot collection, ballots shall be deposited in a secured manner and held nightly in a locked area within the county clerk's office or a location deemed appropriate by the local county board of election in a manner consistent with current ballot security statutes. Section 7, line 17.
Jared,
Yes,
if I could, we missed a line in section 5 that I know is important to the clerks. Section 5, line 5.
Oh, I got it. Sorry about that. Any absentee ballot containing the postponed election date of May 19th shall be deemed valid as to the June 23rd, 2020 elections. As the board might remember, we discussed this at our last meeting. The ballots for the majority of the state had been printed for the election that was to be held on May 19th. We've postponed that to June 23rd, but in a want to save the taxpayers money and the clerks the ability to process these, we're allowing those ballots to exist in this election. So the ballots themselves may say May 19th on them, or they will say May 19th on them, but they will still count for all ballots cast on the June 23rd election. Thank you, Taylor. Section 7, line 17. On or before June 1st, 2020, each county board of elections shall appoint an absentee ballot processing committee with a minimum of 3 members, all of whom must be registered voters. We might also add a line in there, registered voters of that county. However, line 19, each committee shall have a minimum, at minimum, 1 registered Democrat and 1 registered Republican. No more than two-thirds of the membership of the committee shall belong to the same political party. What we've done here is asked for party parity to be involved in these processing committees, but we also haven't limited the clerk's ability to have independents or third-party volunteers working within this process as well. So at the very minimum, we're requiring that at least 1 Democrat, 1 Republican be on the committee, and that if that committee exceeds more than the minimum of 3 members, so for instance, Jefferson County may have a larger contingent, we just ask that the membership of that processing committee not be more than 2/3 of 1 political party affiliation. Page 5, line 1. Each county board of elections shall also authorize members of the news media to observe the absentee ballot processing committee in a manner consistent with Centers for Disease Control guidance. This absentee ballot processing committee may meet every day, subject to the needs and requirements of the ballot processing, beginning June 13th, 2020, to review the absentee ballots cast that day in the county, but shall not record or publicize any tallies or counts of these ballots until 6 p.m. local time, June 23rd. Any questions? All right. Page 5, line 8, section 8. Each workday from June 13th, 2020 through June 30th, 2020, that the members of the absentee ballot processing committee convene, they shall convene at the county clerk's office or a location deemed appropriate by the local county board of election for the purpose of counting received absentee ballots. At any time during this period, any interested candidates, their representatives, and authorized members of the news media shall be allowed to observe. I believe we can also add the same stipulation that we had in section 7, or we can remove section 7 where it says shall allow the media processing committee, I apologize. So the county board of elections shall authorize members of the news media. This seems like an addition that we've already covered in section 8. So we might want to remove that little part just to make this a little more concise, because it covers news media shall be allowed to observe is in section 8. Sorry if I just want to point that out. So line 13, once tabulated, absentee ballots should be stored in a manner consistent with current statutes and practices regarding the storage of absentee ballots. No individual inside the tabulation room shall receive any vote total information before 6 p.m. local time, June 23rd, 2020. If an absentee ballot signature is challenged, the county board absentee ballot processing committee or the county clerk shall make a reasonable effort to contact the voter utilizing the contact information provided by the voter's absentee application to inform them of the challenge, as well as to provide them with a framework and a manner in which they may cure the discrepancy. All signature cures must be made by 4:30 p.m. local time, June 29th. Again, this is one of those dates that we might want to discuss. And just so that everyone has a kind of clear expectation of what this looks like, if a voter's signature does not match the outer flap. So one of the things that we'll be doing is the barcode that goes on the security envelope. When a clerk scans that barcode, the voter registration system will pop up information about that voter, including known signatures of record, including their driver's license, their registration card. If we have the ability to put in roster book signatures, we'll also do that. So any signature that is on file for that voter will be able to be pulled up by the county clerk, making it an effective process for them.
Jared, I think we
yes.
lost Ben. I think we lost Ben.
All right, Alan, will you contact Ben? I'm gonna put us on hold for 1 second. Let me just make sure Ben's in here so that this can be fully, hang on 1 second if you would.
Here we go. I'm in.
Jerry,
You look a lot better, Ben.
Sorry, you got me now.
is Jerry on there?
Yes,
Jerry, this is George.
yes.
You talked about the 29th. If there is a recanvass requested, is there time from the 29th on to take care of all your deadlines?
George, you're getting into, I believe, section 11, I think. Let me,
You were
get the-
talking
no,
about.
we do have
You were
an
talking about-
exemption in there for canvassing. So we've pushed back the recanvassing date by a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jared, can I just say something really quick? This is Renisa. With like the extended dates of accepting the ballots past election day, just know that we won't be able to release totals, vote totals using the scanners. Roger Baird with Harp Enterprises just wanted everyone to know that the results won't happen until after we stop accepting everything.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
All
ESNS has said, thank you, Renisa, for putting that. It's actually a really good point. ESNS has said the same thing, that
Okay.
once those optical scanners start the tallying process, they have to close the election down before they'll give actual election totals.
Okay, thank
so
you.
again, that will be a very hard thing for voters, not voters rather, but if county board members or processing committee members were to see totals and release them prior to the election coming out, it's made much harder because of the way the optical scan readers are set up now. So that process is much better now. Thank you, Renisa.
So there will be no election returns on the 23rd.
Well, so I think that's one conversation we need to have. I think Renisa's point was that no election returns will be posted before the 23rd. So
I understand.
Right. So that might be a discussion that the board needs to address is, do we release partial returns on the 23rd of what has come in thus far, as long as the public understands that the final vote tally won't take place till a week later on June 30th? I know in other states that have processes similar to this that have been doing it for a little longer than us, that is usually what their process is they release partial results on the 23rd and then allow for the vote totals, to be posted on a week after the election itself, and those will be the official results that are posted. So that might be something the board and the secretary, if you guys would like to speak about that after this, that might be one of those topic points that we discuss.
Would that be considered the best practice, Jared?
I think there's arguments for both sides that, this is this part of the election Kentucky has not necessarily seen before, so the public might be confused by the idea that on election night they receive one vote totals of someone being in the lead, and then a week later that lead could completely change, and then another individual actually win that election. However, I know that Kentuckians are able to be able to challenge, have adversity, and be able to work through that. And as long as the news media is very clear about that on election night in messaging that these are uncertified totals, that they are not complete totaling yet, and that there's still a week of ballot processing left, I think you could probably say that the best practices at that point would be to release partial totals, letting the electorate kind of know that, hey, your election the election day is final, but that the clerks are still processing, but here's where we stand currently, and then give them an update a week later after all of the ballots have been completely totaled.
Mr. Secretary, do you have any thoughts on this issue?
That sounds fine with me. What I would not want to do, as you all know, I generally publish, put out statements and tweets with quote unofficial results. I don't plan to do that this time on election night. What I think it would look like basically is with 5% reporting, here are the numbers. With 10% reporting, here are the numbers. Whatever count we're up to on election night based on the number of ballots that we reasonably anticipate based on the use of the portal. We won't be able to say this is specifically 5% or 10%. It'll be an estimate even of how total the returns actually are. I'm very comfortable with permitting announcements of what the current counts are. I don't see a reason to wait for a week like Wisconsin did. I don't think we need to, as long as we're clear about the fact that these are completely unofficial and incomplete results.
Yes, I also agree. This George, I think we need to release something the election day, election night. Unofficial, whatever you call it, but we need to release something.
Anybody else have any thoughts on the subject?
Jared, this is James, or Ben, this is James. If we release any totals on election night, That means we'll have to close out all the counters, and any counting ballots received after that would have to be hand counted and manually entered.
No, they would still, I've been told by ES&S and HARP that the optical scanners that we would be utilizing, you'd be able to close the election out on election night and then open them back up and then
Okay.
processing on the same optical.
Okay, good, good.
Any other further discussion before I go back? All right, page 6, section.
Hey, Jared,
yes.
Jared,
Yes,
it would have to be another machine. I mean, you can't, the scanner can't be closed and then opened back up.
Yes.
So
That's what I'm saying. It would
you
work
have-
much like the normal election does now, where you've got multiple scanners and multiple precincts, and then you consolidate those vote totals at the end of the election.
Right. Okay, yes.
I'm not sure that's correct.
Once you close out one scanner, you cannot reopen it.
Right.
So, and then,
Right, but you would then have to work on another scanner, which counties will have multiple scanners for these things, just like they do in their normal precinct elections. And then they'll combine those election totals from those multiple scanners, is what I'm saying.
and you would have to change the closing date on the second scanner you're using.
Yes,
To
that's
extend it.
correct. Yeah, that's correct. And again, a lot of these things are not enumerated in this policy because those are in the administrative regulation, because they're more policy related issues. The releasing of the results on the 23rd and then the final results on the 30th, that's kind of something we can put in here, but the granular details of how that, like the machine counts, like I don't know if that's necessary to get into necessarily in the actual administrative regulation. Because again, we've got multiple different systems out there in counties doing it, as long as they conform to the general principles. Page 6, section 9, beginning June 1st, 2020, and through 6 p.m. local time, June 23rd, 2020, each county clerk shall make their offices and telephone lines available for the purpose of allowing registered voters of that county to schedule an appointment to vote absentee in person, beginning June 8th and ending June 23rd. This is one of the things I wanted to bring up. So we are asking that the county clerks provide an in-person option for voters that absolutely need one. I think we want to make sure that we message this very appropriately, that we are asking as many voters as possible to vote by absentee mail, to make sure that every voter has the opportunity to cast their ballot in the way that is effective for them and appropriate. So if someone is disabled and they need access to a system, that system is going to be available to them. However, it's not limited to only the disabled. This is a voting system in person that is allowed for voters, but they do so by appointment, and that the clerk have that discussion with the voter to make sure that they have a reasonable opportunity to schedule an appointment to do that. However, one of the things we might want to discuss is whether or not, if we're asking, if the board is basically saying that June 8th county clerks must start that process, but in my opinion, I believe we should also give counties that have the ability to start that process once the administrative regulation is signed and then approved by the secretary and the governor, that counties could start that in-person appointment process as soon as that is approved. As long as they have something up by June 8th. All right, so page 6, line 6, no in-person absentee voting shall be permitted on June 14th or June 21st. Those are both Sundays. Should a county clerk desire to begin in-person absentee voting by appointment before June 1st, they shall have the ability at their discretion. Again, that was one of the discussion point we just had. Also, while it allows for Saturday voting, I think that would be to the discretion of the clerk, whether they're actually, if they choose to have their office open and they have those resources, they can. But it doesn't specifically say they have to, it just says they can. I just want to make sure that's clear. County clerk shall make reasonable effort to accommodate in-person appointments according to the needs and availability of both the requesting voter as well as the clerk's office. Appointments shall be consistent with public health and social distancing standards, and every reasonable effort shall be undertaken by county clerks to see that in-person absentee voting is implemented in a manner that limits direct contact between voters, other voters, and elections officials, and shall be conducted throughout the clerk's business hours. Once in-person absentee voting has concluded on June 23rd, 2020, the cumulative results shall be tabulated by the Absentee Processing Committee or County Board of Elections. Section 10. All vote totals must be transmitted via certification, official count, and record of election totals on SBE 49. SB 49 to the Secretary of State's office no later than 6 p.m. local time on June 30th, 2020. Again, this is the same process that we currently utilize, in which the clerks fill out a 49 form and send that to the Secretary of State's office. Secretary of State will then put that book together and present it to the State Board of Elections for ultimate certification.
Now, we're only talking about statewide people that file with the Secretary of State. Is that correct?
Yeah, the counties would have to file those papers with the Secretary of State's office.
But local elections for mayor and so forth would not go to the Secretary of State.
Secretary, I think that's a question I would ask you if you want those totals sent to you. But as of right now, I don't believe we do.
No, you do not right now.
George, are you saying that you would like that?
No, I'm saying that's additional work. That's additional totals. You're changing the procedures. If you
No,
want,
we're saying that the state races, the races that are to be certified and sent to the Secretary of State and then certified by the State Board of Elections are to be sent to the Secretary of State. I'm not asking for any additional totals.
they're the ones that file with the Secretary of State then?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I make just a very quick point? Something that you'll see in my recommendation letter is that number one, I clarify that any existing law regulation that's inconsistent with these provisions is suspended, but also that anyone that is not remains intact. My goal here is not to change any process, any procedure, any rule, anything that we don't have to change. So whatever our prior procedure is, I certainly don't want to add any burdens to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, George. And that was, I think, our intention as well, is to make sure that we're changing as little as possible, but accommodating everything that we have to. Page 7, section 11, line 1. The process for any recanvassing of votes shall be conducted pursuant to the method prescribed by KRS 117035, except for the filing deadline shall be moved from 4 p.m. on the Tuesday following the primary election to 4 p.m. local time, July 7th. This will accommodate the fact that we're pushing the results back by a week. George, I think this is something you brought up.
Okay. Yes.
Section 12, line 5. Should changes in conditions related to COVID-19 pandemic require additional policies or procedures, the State Board of Elections shall promulgate further administrative regulations after a public meeting of the board and approved both by the governor and Secretary of State. Section 13. Incorporated by reference. The following material is incorporated by reference. A, certification, official count, and record of election totals, SBE 49. 2, parent 2, the material may be inspected, copied, or obtained subject to applicable copyright law at the State Board of Elections, 140 Walnut Street. I've also put together a timetable for the elections. If you also want to take a look at that as well, I'll briefly go over that and then we can open that up to further discussion, I think.
Jared, I want to compliment you on that timetable. I do have one request.
Yes, sir.
A portal to me, computers are a mystery to me, okay? Instead of the wording as soon as possible, how about have a date no later than and a certain date? Because if the portal is not ready, the whole election is not going to work.
That's correct. And that's part of the reason why I've said as soon as available. I can give you a rough timetable. So let me give a brief exclamation of the things that
Look at it and later on,
Yeah.
no later than.
I don't know if I can, honestly, George, I mean, I'm definitely hearing you. And if the board tells me to prescribe a date, obviously I'll do that. But I don't know if I can efficiently do that and guarantee the site will be what we need it to be. What I think we can do is give you a timetable of when that will be done, because one of the things that we're doing is it's not just building the website, it's all the back end processes that we're trying to accommodate for the county clerks as well. So the website will have up and running, but the ties to the voter registration system, the ties that will allow the labeling and the processing, all of those are ongoing right now. And so my expectation is we should have them done in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But if hypothetically, if I get to that last week on week 4 and we're working out bugs still, I might need a couple extra days. So, I mean, if the board tells me that you're urging me to have it done within the next 4 weeks, I think that's something we can accommodate. But to give a specific date deadline, I don't want to do that, because I want to make sure that we notify the public the moment it's ready and have it be a robust, stable system that the public, once they start logging on, that it will work for them. But if we signal to people that it's ready before it is, and people are constantly logging on, trying to find out, well, why isn't it here? Why isn't it here? I think that'll hurt the overall system.
Are you telling me you cannot send the postcards out until the system is?
No. We are, so my expectation is that, you know, we'll have the URL already. And what we'll do is I'm going to be sending artwork to the printers probably next week. It will take approximately 3 to 4 weeks for those postcards to be printed and sent out. So that way the postcards will arrive roughly a month before the election. And at that point in time, the portal will be able to be live. I'll make sure that the portal is ready to go prior to the cards being released. But they'll be printed and ready to be shipped out, you know, within a day. And so I think that's the timeline that I'm working on right now. Is the goal is if the portal is done in the next 3 to 4 weeks and the cards are ready in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I'll communicate with the vendor and let them know, please hold those cards until the day I say, okay, the portal's ready and ready to go live. And it's robust and stable and it can handle the loads that we're expecting. And then they'll mail those out and they should start arriving within the next day after that. And so again, we're talking about those postcards arriving 4 to 5 weeks prior to the election.
Well, no, you got too many days there. If you're talking about 4 weeks to get the portal up and going.
Mm-hmm.
This is Sherry. So just to add to George, you know, one of the things with the IT background is one thing that makes me very nervous is when I hear ifs or shoulds. You know, I'm leaning on George's point that, you know, with something this huge and this critical, we do need some, if we don't have this by this date, it is going to then push back everything else. So I personally would like to see a project plan and, you know, completion dates. It's critical. And Jared, I sympathize with you in the sense of IT. I know how rough that is to, you know, say, hey, it's going to be ready by this date. But in this situation, it's critical. We need to know, you know, as soon as possible in the IT world is just unacceptable. You know, we need to know that if you're not ready with these computer systems by X date, what is our alternate plan? I have every confidence that your team is going to pull this off and get it together. But we do need, you know, a little bit more depth planning when it comes to these systems. I'm not comfortable with if these cards and if and shoulds. Makes me very nervous.
Certainly. Here's what I would recommend, and this is what I was going to recommend either way, is that individually, what I can do is have each board member individually log in. I'll be on the line with you and Tom, our senior architect, and the three of us individually can go over exactly what the project looks like, where we're at. We'll show you the architecture and the schematics of kind of what the flow looks like and all the processes that we're connecting to the portal, and show you what that looks like and give you a very clear expectation of kind of what that project timeline looks like. I just don't want to make a public announcement of a date that I can't specify right now. I am confident in our ability to do this. I know that we will be able to do it. We're also making backup plans in case, so contingency. So as you know, in IT, systems can crash, servers can fail. So we're making contingency plans and continuity of operations plans in case there are worst case scenarios that will allow us to have failover and rollover capability to be able to maintain our system. So
yeah, and absolutely. And I would be willing to offer my services in any way I can to, just make sure that, just as an overseer or someone that can look, I'm always that person that sees, the things that sometimes other people don't see on the IT world. So yeah, anything I can do to help, make this launch successful, but it is critical because we don't have a choice. If we're going forward with saying we're going to have this ready, it's not a if or should, it's we have to, and we're on a short timeline, and I know that puts a lot of pressure on you guys. So yeah, I'm offering any kind of services I can to overview, help, or have discussion.
Ultimately, what I'd like to do is bring every board member in individually. We'll do so remotely. It won't be a public meeting, obviously, because we're looking at internal structures, internal systems. And that's not open to open public meetings laws. But I do want to show you what the process looks like, what the kind of code development looks like, and what systems we're working on, and then be able to show you a timeline that we've got internal that we're working on. I know we can deliver this product. I don't want to over promise on a specific deadline right now. I think in the next week or two, I can get very much closer to giving you a specific time frame. George, to your point of being able to say on this date, the product will go live.
No, that wasn't my point. My point.
Yeah, I think George, yeah, go ahead, George.
My point is that look at, you said 4 weeks. Look at 4 weeks from now. Look at the deadlines that county clerks have to do certain things. Look at mailing the postcards and taking probably 3 days to get anywhere in the state. And then look at the time frame the county clerks are in and getting the ballots to the voters, because somewhere there is a date that we can no longer pull this election off if we go too far over the timeline and have to ask for a July election.
Yeah, I think what George is asking for is that in this timeline that we provide a date that if the systems are not available, what is that date that we would have to go to a different plan? That's we don't really need, all those, we just need to know, okay, we're looking at you saying, give us that date that this is our drop dead date for the computer being up, available. And I'm enjoying really having James and Renisa on here. And I'm really dependent and looking for their input as well, just on, that time frame. I mean, I don't know all those weeds. I don't know all those layers. And, we just need to look to them and say, hey, what's your date? And then we work, backwards from there, as far as the computer systems being that date. So, yeah, that's what we're looking for. We can't do ifs and shoulds. We need that date and then, contingency.
Of course. And I think that, one of the things I can say is that it 4 weeks is, I think, appropriate timeline for me to give you right now. If you're looking for kind of a definitive, with the expectation that, yes, if something does go wrong, we'll have contingency plans ready for the board to act on. My belief is we'll be ready, knowing kind of where the project is right now and what's been done already. I think we're in a really good place. My hope is that the postcards will be ready to go to print this next week, and that they'll be printed and completed within the next 3 weeks and ready to ship out. That'll give 5 weeks before the election. And my goal is if ideally I'm giving myself 4 weeks for the project and the team 4 weeks for the project. But if we can get it done prior to that, my hope is that the system can go live before the postcards go out. Then what we can do is message that to the Secretary of State, the governor, the board, the county clerks, and they can do their own media campaigns and press releases notifying the public that the portal's up and ready to go. So that will actually decrease some of the load. We'll see that first week the postcards go out, because we're expecting the heaviest load on the system to hit us that week the postcards go out. So if we can actually have the system live before the postcards go up, that's going to be the ideal situation. But I think
can't imagine why you wouldn't have it live, Jared. I mean, I
it'll
can't
be live
imagine
before the
sending
postcards go out, but
postcards out and it not being live.
oh no, it'll be live before the postcards go out. Like, I'm holding the postcards back specifically until the system is live. But my hope is that if the postcards are ready in 3 to 4 weeks, that the system can be ready in 2 to 3 weeks. And then we go live, and then the postcards go out a week to a week and a half later, as soon as they're printed and ready to go out. That'll give us a week and a half of buffer time to be able to load test the system, to spread out some of the amount of voters that will be accessing it. Because like I said, if the Secretary of State, the clerks, the board, the governor all message to the public that the portal is available, it's open, you can now start that process. And then the postcards go out a week later, then that spike that we hit won't be as large to the system. So,
Look, can you work very closely with Sherry and George on this and make sure that it's acceptable to them and that they can effectively monitor it with you?
I'll bring both Sherry and George in this week on a teleconference with Tom, and we'll sit down and look at the project and explain to it in detail what that looks like. And then any other board member that would like to do that as well, I'm more than happy to facilitate that next week.
Yeah, and just from Renisa and James, I would like for them to provide us with a date that, if we provide, if the systems are up in 4 weeks, does that give them enough time to then continue on with the process? I mean, I'm really looking at them to it's critical that we listen to those, those clerks, and, they're the ones they are the ones that are going to be out there, after we get the systems up and all those things, that they have plenty of time, because 4 weeks now we're down to that 30-day mark after that, and maybe less than that even now. So yeah, Renisa, James, work with us and help us create something that is going to be feasible, that you guys are not doing anything in haste is not going to be good. I mean, we're already in that haste area. So I'm really looking to Renisa and James to say, hey, it's going to be hard, but we can do this. We've got to listen to these clerks in this kind of situation. And I'm in IT, so I know how many things can go wrong. Jared, as you do as well. So that's why I want to, work and help any way I can.
Yep. Thank you very much, Sherry. Appreciate it. And Ben, I'll definitely bring George and Sherry in this week, and we'll go through that in detail. But like I said, the full board is I'll make that available to anyone that wants to come in and kind of see what that project looks like, and we'll go over it in detail with you. Including
do we have any other discussion or questions? I'd like to proceed to a vote on this as soon as you all are comfortable.
I guess I have a procedural comment then, if I can go ahead and make it, Ben.
Yes, Corey, please do.
Let me just start by saying I want to echo the comments earlier that this has been a bipartisan effort, and thank everyone involved. I think this is a very good and workable framework, and I'm in agreement with the framework. I do have a little bit of an issue about going ahead and voting on an actual regulation today, though, with as much as still needs to be done in way of detail with the regulation. So at least I would feel comfortable with maybe a general motion that goes to, our willingness and desire to follow the executive order and the letter from Secretary Adams. But just from a personal standpoint, I don't know that I, as a board member, can vote on a regulation without seeing the final text of the regulation. And from a legal standpoint, I don't want to open us up to a challenge later from someone who said that the board didn't really adopt the regulation as written. So I don't want to create work for anyone, and I certainly don't want to invade people's time. But at least from my standpoint, if we're going to vote on an actual regulation, this is what it is in the text, I at least would want to come back and have that as a separate vote after reading that text.
Any thoughts on that?
I concur with what Corey just said. I'm not comfortable with voting on something if we don't have the final language on it. I think we need to, get everything narrowed down. We've got we're close. I don't think we're way off, but I haven't had enough time to review it, since we got it last evening. And I just feel like I'd be more comfortable if we have the final language before we actually vote.
Are there particular things in the language? I guess it might be a good idea for us to discuss what particular things in the language you all believe need to be fine-tuned or changed.
What I think
Well,
heard that, there's still some leeway in some of that. So I'm not sure what direction. And Secretary Adams had indicated that he wanted to work with Jared on some of the language to get to the final draft. So if there's still some of that work that needs to occur, I feel like that needs to occur before we vote.
Yeah, can I just chime in for a second? I want to get the wording right. I want to get the dates agreed to. Certainly, you have a commitment from me. I'm not going to deviate from what already has been agreed to between me and the governor. But I also would like to get some public input. This is a public meeting. I'd like to have the public able to make comments to us or to me or the governor's office over the next maybe day or two. I certainly understand the need to get this promulgated formally as quickly as possible. I want to do that. But I also want to give everyone certainty on what they're voting on.
Yeah, and since I raised the point, Ben, I mean, implicit in your question, is there something in here that bothers me or I know about currently that's a problem? From my perspective, the answer to that right now is no. It really is a procedural question for me that I don't feel like I can responsibly cast a vote today. And I also believe that if we vote to allow others to then determine the details, we open ourselves up to the fact that we as the board didn't actually adopt the regulation as it's finally written.
Can I just interject here? Can I ask how long are we taking? Because we already know there's a time crunch. I'm so stressed over this. Can I just get some input? Like how much time are we needing?
Well, from my perspective, I think and the clerks know, the public knows what's going to happen. I think in terms of that actually being reflected by something that's inked on the books, maybe we need another business day or two. But I certainly think we're all in agreement, and the public are on notice now. Voters are on notice. Clerks are on notice of what we're going to be doing.
Well, I'd like to vote today on at least a general framework. Sure. And as far as the regulations are concerned, it would suit me fine to get a document nailed down that comports with the general framework and maybe vote on that early next week. But if you have a general framework right now, Renisa, will that be sufficient if we get the final language done early next week?
It's better than nothing. I mean, we've got to have a plan where we can start calling people. We can start making arrangements. Right. We can get our members together, schedule our board meetings. We can't wait another minute. I mean, it's just so crucial. Well, for this to work, it's got to happen. And I'm not trying to push anybody. I'm just trying to make it successful.
Well, we all need to be pushed on this thing because we need to make sure we get it done. I think the problem that the board members have is that the governor and the secretary of state just within the last 24 hours have come up with language, and that language, we haven't had a chance to really look at it with great specificity. And it's, we didn't get the Secretary of State's language, I don't believe, till this morning. And we had some preliminary board language late last night. So we really are we're trying to do this as quickly as we possibly can. Yes.
This George.
Yes, George.
My question is to Jared. Will this hold up any of your work?
No, I don't believe so, because the board's already given me the authority to purchase the equipment and materials we need. If you don't mind,
I'm more concerned about the portal than anything.
No, that's not gonna, that we don't need to stop development on that. And quite frankly, I've had my IT team cloistered for the last, not just sequestered because of COVID, but just like literally everyone's been like hands off, don't give them other jobs because they're working on this other process right now. So that's not gonna be a problem. I would say maybe a compromise for everyone's needs here could be if the board is willing to kind of vote to acknowledge the secretary's and governor's, the secretary's recommendations and the governor's executive order. Obviously, that's not something we can change as a board, but we can say that we're in agreement with that, and that we are working towards finalizing those specific goals and outlined in administrative regulation. That will give Renisa and the clerks the ability to say, okay, now we know where we're going. Now we know that, the process has started for us and we can start moving in that direction appropriately. Myself, the secretary, my general counsel will sit down and we'll hammer out the exact language and questions that we've talked about today. And then perhaps early next week, we can have a special meeting to ratify the exact language on this.
Chairman
That,
Chandler.
I think might solve everyone's concerns.
Yes, James.
Yeah, there's one point on section 7. It appears that county boards will appoint processing and county committees, but it doesn't appear to allow county boards to be a counting committee, which county boards are more
They can appoint themselves.
familiar. Pardon?
They can appoint themselves.
Yes, they can appoint themselves. That's one of the things
Well,
that we
then there's a problem there.
Sorry,
There's a problem there too. If you appoint themselves, in vast majority of counties, probably 3 members of the 4-member board are one party. I'd say you're looking probably at least half. So the 2/3 rule could not apply there.
If you've got 4 members, one of them is a Democrat by law, that one of the board members has to be a Democrat, that
Yeah.
they would suffice. But again, you're only even then they would only technically have to appoint 2 members. The goal here was to provide the ability of the county boards to appoint whomever they chose, as long as it met the statutory requirements to provide the ability to be in session throughout that processing time, to be able to get all the applications in, to check the signatures, to cure the signatures, to tally the ballots. So the goal here is not to subvert the county board's authority. It's actually to allow the county board to have people in their stead or themselves. But we also recognize that county board members, not in all counties, have the ability to be in session for 3 weeks prior to the election.
I understand that, but I feel it'd be much stronger and a better version if county boards in total were allowed to actually do what they currently do, or they have the option of also appointing county committees. And from what I read this, there's no option there for county boards in total if their membership, well, in total at all, because it's restricted to 3 members and there's 4 members on the county board.
So if they've got 4 members and the 1 member is a Democrat by law, they have to be.
Yeah, I understand that. That's not an issue. The parity is not an issue. The issue is you're cutting it to 3 members and only 2/3 of them can be.
What we're saying is a minimum. If you choose. So if what we're saying is, if a board would like to be all 4 board members and the board itself would like to be in session every single day, that is absolutely available to them to choose to do so. Again, this was not subverting the will of the county boards. It's giving them the ability to have additional staff to help processing in a way that is meaningful for the board and done so in a way that's effective. So if the board chooses to be in session itself, it can do that, and it can appoint all 4 members of the County Board of Election to serve, because it's a minimum of 3, not
a minimum of 3. But if 3 of the members of one party, then they cannot meet the 2/3 requirement of membership being of no more than one party.
Well, that would basically state that the board itself would be excluding 1 member of the board, and 1 member of the board would be of one party affiliation.
I understand that, but it appears to me like it would be a much better fit to keep the board intact if they want to do it and disregard, because these are appointed on membership or elected members. Now,
I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused.
I think this could be
I don't think we're
handled
doing
much,
that.
I think this could be handled much differently and much better with a more fluid flow of the count on election or during the election process. If the people who are used to counting ballots and are familiar with the process, whenever possible, are allowed. Otherwise, you've got to make choices unless one member wants to voluntarily not sit on that board, then the board has to vote to basically kick one member out of the process of serving on the county board, the process of actually tabulating the vote.
If one, so James, and my apologies, I don't want you to think I'm contradicting what you're saying. Maybe I'm confused a little bit. If a county board decides that they would like to appoint themselves to be the processing committee, they're more than capable of doing that under the way that it's currently written. Now, if you say one member of the board decides that they can't do that because they can't be, they've got a job or they can't work, and that one member happens to be of a party affiliation that would then exclude having 2/3 of majority, then that board needs a way to be able to find that there's party parity there. And to me, that's a mandate. That's not a can. And I don't think that would be subverting the will of the board. That's the board saying, okay, well then if that's the case, you need to then hire one member of a non-board member that would be either a D or an R, depending on who that board member that is that couldn't serve, to be able to fill that spot. Now, if the other 3 board members would like to serve as the processing committee because they have the capacity to do so, although I don't see too many sheriffs having the ability to be there for 3 weeks every single day, the board still has the ability to bring in extra staff. So this is just setting a minimum standard that they appoint 3 people to have a processing committee so that they can keep up with the amount of work that will come in over the 2 and 3 weeks prior to the election and the week after the election as well. But if it's the county board that chooses to do so, they still have that ability. But they do have to have parity.
Yeah, I understand that current law, they can do that now, appoint county committees. But and I was just a little confused about why this was even basically in this, which county, under current law, I think county boards still can do that today. And a lot of counties, large counties do use county committees.
They do. Part of the reasons why it's in here is one of the things that we've asked, and the governor didn't place this in his executive order, but one of the things that we've asked is for extra resources to the counties. So especially the smaller counties, they just don't have the amount of staff that they need to be able to handle the amount of load that they're about to get. And we want to signal both to the county clerks that we need you to gear up and recognize that you will have an amount and a scale of ballots coming back to you that you've never seen before, and have the ability to process those effectively so that the state can have those results back in a timely fashion. But we're also saying to the governor, that we're asking for resources to be provided to the county boards of elections so that they can do this. And so several of the things that we've asked the governor is potentially asking for lists of state employees to be reallocated to the county clerks, individuals that live in the county, and for the clerks to receive a list of those individuals, and for the county board to be able to utilize that list of individuals to be able to help with processing committees. That doesn't say that the county board can't select itself. It just says that we recognize that the counties will need extra resources here, and that we're mandating that at least 3 people be identified prior to the election, so that they can have, so that the state can have the board can have a ministerial role of knowing that every county has effectively selected enough people to count, tabulate, and process all the things that they'll need to do prior to the election and then after the election.
Okay, so I have a suggestion.
Jared.
Go ahead, Ben, sorry.
Go ahead, Sherry.
No, I just was going,
Well, I was just going to say.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make a suggestion. I mean, I think today I would be prepared to vote on the shell of this. One of the things that keeps coming to mind, we've got to make a decision, and our secretary has worked with the governor, and we are in a position, we've got to, you know, even when we're not 100% sure as leaders, we've got to make a decision. And I would be comfortable in voting on the shell of this because I trust the input that has been put behind it. I would love to, for example, on, you know, take the weekend and look to, and Katrina, I apologize for missing you a while ago when I was talking about input. You're just as critical, trust me. But you know, look at this, the wording, you know, and have Renisa, James, and Katrina maybe come back and say, you know, and also Corey or anyone in the board that, you know, has some input on changing some of the language. You know, those people are the ones that truly know that.
Sherry, I think that's great. And James, if it's all right with you, if you can just talk this through with Jared on this particular issue in the next couple of days as they're putting the final language together, I think that'd be great. And I think that'd get us where we need to be. I'd like to call on Member Sears at the moment. Dwight, could you give us some thoughts?
Yeah, I really agree with basically what's been said. You know, we have an unwritten rule or a written rule around here, no surprises. And there's 13 different faces on this screen right now. And I guess 13 of us could come up with 13 different definitions on several things that's been discussed. Jared, you did a phenomenal job, but we talked on a few things that need to be added or maybe a few things that need to be removed. I would love to see a final draft, you know, to echo what Corey had said, just to make sure that we're covered. Naturally, we can't change the executive order that the governor issued. So I would support that. I would vote that we support that naturally, but then also allow Secretary Adams to work on a final draft. He being the chief election officer moving forward with some of these changes. I think the weekend would definitely give us some time to study and absorb what's been given to us in the last few hours that none of us have really had a chance to study and absorb it.
Well, thank you. I would like, if we possibly could, to have a vote on a framework that the county clerks and the staff are comfortable with, that comports with what the governor and the Secretary of State want to do, so they can move forward and get this thing underway. And then we can come back and have another vote early next week on the exact language that would comport with the framework, if that suits everybody.
Hey, let me just quickly add, the governor's order is fairly brief. My recommendations are very meticulous. The order of the governor incorporates my recommendations. My view is if you all vote to accept the recommendations by me as incorporated in the governor's order, word it however you want, but if the board votes to follow a regulatory process consistent with the direction of the governor and the recommendations of the Secretary of State, maybe that's specific enough, because it sounds really vague and wishy-washy, but in fact, it's a pretty specific path to take because the recommendations are pretty meticulous.
I'd agree with that as well.
I think that's a good idea legally as well.
Do we have a motion?
Okay, so just for people like me, what exactly, put that in layman's terms for me. What exactly are we voting on? What's the motion?
To promulgate regulations to effectuate the governor's executive order, inclusive of the recommendations made by the Secretary of State.
So essentially, that's still going to leave us some room on the backside for some of these language issues that we're seeing. Is that correct?
I believe so. And when you have a chance to read the recommendations from me, pretty much all of them begin, quote, "The State Board of Elections by emergency regulation shall provide." So there's specific direction in there. about what exactly needs to be promulgated in the regulation without me dictating the wording of it. But there's a clear path, and the governor's agreed to all of those points by references in his executive order. So I'm not trying to kick the can yet again. I really don't want to do that. But by adopting just simply that today, it gives us the freedom to hash out the specific wording and make sure it's legally compliant, but also give direction to the clerks and the voters and everyone else.
I can agree to that. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you.
I think we've got a general framework that we've outlined here. And I think it's also very important that at the end of this meeting, after we have a vote, that we make sure that the public is clear, that a synopsis or a summary is done and released to the public to make sure that it's understood the direction that this election is going to take.
In plain language, we'll make that happen.
I want to make sure I'm understanding. So is the proposal to go ahead and start with these, and then we will reconvene next week to vote on final language? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to make
Yeah,
sure I'm clear
So
on.
the board would adopt the executive order and the recommendations by the Secretary of State. That
Right.
way the clerks have a clear guideline of saying, hey, this is the direction we're going in. And then the board can direct the staff to continue working with the Secretary of State's office. We'll finalize language. We'll get that out to you this weekend, and then early next week, Monday or Tuesday, we can officially vote on the administrative emergency regulations. But at least the clerks have the ability to go to sleep this weekend knowing that they know what basically they will be doing, which is outlined generally in what we've said, with the exception of a few of the things that we've had discussions on, which we'll
No, we need to give them a path to run on, but I just don't want to not do what our responsibility is here of reviewing that final language.
Yeah, and just real quick on informing the public, obviously my office is going to be engaged in that. I've got about 10 media interviews back to back as soon as we're done with this. We'll also come up with a summary, and anything that you all choose to produce, a summary for clerks or for voters or anyone else, obviously we're happy to forward that around and get it some attention.
Mr. Secretary.
Yes, sir.
This is George. In all your interviews with the press, insist that the people get their addresses updated, because many people have moved in the last 30 days. And for them to get a postcard, they need to correct their addresses. They can do it on that Go Kentucky Vote, Go Vote Kentucky.
It's a great point. Thank you.
And can
So should
I
we-
just add really quick in the messaging too, can it be, emphasized that these regulations are being promulgated to promote the absentee mail feature, and that's what we would like to see happen for the safety of everyone. We realize that some in-person may have to happen, but we just want to minimize that for everybody's safety. If that could be pushed forward in all the messaging, that would be wonderful too. And I just want to thank you all for taking the actions you've taken and all of your hard work and your willingness to listen to the clerks. And it means a great deal to us. And we know we'll have some questions and things to deal with, but thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to go ahead and see if we should move the motion that we've been discussing.
I would appreciate that for, among other reasons, I'm losing my internet connection. So I'd like to get a vote as soon as possible.
Okay. I'm happy.
Are you making a motion, Corey?
Sure. I've never been hesitant to talk, so I'll try to capture what we've said, and people can correct me if I get this wrong. But Mr. Chairman, I would move that the board adopt the executive order from the governor, which incorporates by reference the letter of Secretary Adams, and that we agree that we're going to promulgate a regulation consistent with those two documents and reconvene early next week to vote on final language.
We have a motion by Corey and Deanna. Did you second it?
I did, yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes, and I think we can now move on. And I'm not kidding. I'm about to lose my internet connection, and you all may just have to go on without me.
Put another quarter in there, Mr. Chairman.
Anyway, can you all hear me?
Yep.
I live in a valley, and it apparently doesn't. I don't have very good internet.
Ben, it must be the
We have
library's-
Secretary Adams.
library's Wi-Fi.
We have Secretary Adams next on the agenda. I don't, do you have anything else to add, Mr. Secretary?
Well, I do. It's a little anticlimactic, but you all will find on the very last page of your board book, there's a form. I don't recall the form number. It's a form that SOS and SBE jointly issue. It is for a party to nominate a candidate for a special election, and that form requires notarization of the signatures of the chair and secretary of the party in order for my office to be able to accept a nomination of a candidate in a special election. As you know, we've got a special election in the 26th Senate District on June 23rd, Ernie Harris's Senate District. Under the circumstances, it's fairly difficult to get a notarization. I've certainly discovered that as the person who regulates notaries. I've heard a lot about that. Specifically, I've looked at this and I can find no legal authority for this form to have to be notarized. I don't believe there's any current regulation, and I certainly can't find any statute either that requires parties to notarize the signatures of the chair and secretary of the party to make a nomination effective. So I've been reached out to about this to see if we can provide some relief on that. I actually don't think that there's any requirement of it, but just out of belt and suspenders caution, I'd like to ask the board to vote to waive the requirement for any party to secure notarized signatures of their chair and secretary in order to make a nomination for a special election.
I'll be happy to move that motion. I'm sorry, I had to get off unmute.
I'll second that. You're on mute, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any discussion on that motion?
And this is just for the purposes of this current condition. Am I right, Michael?
Yes, thanks for making me clarify that. This is for purposes of the June 23rd election.
Right.
Do we have any other discussions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Jared, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, a couple things. Just wanted to make everyone aware of. So the board gave me permission at our last meeting to start processes of purchasing. I just wanted to give you a brief update on where we're at with that. So we have purchased 1.7 million outer envelopes, 1.7 million inner envelopes, 1.7 million security envelopes. That should fulfill the need for the state for mailing of absentee envelopes. We have also purchased card stock of 3.4 million postcards so that the printers have those and are ready to go. We've also been in communication with the printers, providing them the part of the process for getting their printing ready to go so that they're ready as soon as we have that artwork ready to them next week. We have all of our, I'm actually really excited about this. We have all of our DRE counties that are on non-paper systems have agreed to take equipment that the state is purchasing to allow them to facilitate an election that will be on paper systems. If a county is ES&S county, they're going to stay ES&S and upgrade those equipments to Express Votes and DS200s. And if a county is HARP and HART intercivic equipment, they're going to stay HARP and that they will be upgrading the Verity systems. We're purchasing the ballots for those counties. And we've already purchased the ballots and printing for those as well. We have installed, Sherry, you'll be excited about this. We've installed our new servers. So our servers are in. We're currently load testing right now, and we're running parallel with our old system so that we'll be able to kind of continue using one as a test system and keep going with the other, allowing us for more bandwidth and updated systems. We'll be sending out a memo probably early next week to the county clerks, asking the county clerks to facilitate a continuity of operations plan that would also incorporate what happens if COVID-19 is in their office during the election season. One of my biggest fears is if a county clerk or a deputy clerk has COVID, they come into the office in the weeks prior to the election, and then the whole office is under quarantine. What happens to that county's election? We're going to ask that they start to communicate with their county judge executive in identifying county staff members that they can bring in, cross-train in their offices on election systems and any other clerk's services, and have those people segregated so that if something does happen to the office, they can bring them in at a moment's notice. We'll be sending that memo out probably early next week. We are working with Protection and Advocacy, which is our disability rights advocacy agency for the state. We're continuing to work with them on some of the design aspects of language that we're putting out, including instructions for the absentee ballots and the postcard. We're also using the Center for Civic Design for some of our language when it comes to that, so we can make sure it's accessible and understandable. And then the other last thing I wanted to talk to and bring up to the board, I've spoken to Secretary Adams about this, is the purchase of ballot boxes. The board's giving me discretion to purchase this, but I thought this was something of interest enough that I wanted to bring it back to the board before I did make this purchase. The thought here is that we could help facilitate the process for the counties by purchasing secure ballot boxes to be located at the county courthouse for every county. The units that we're looking at, these things are built like tanks. They're bolted into the ground. They would be under camera surveillance, and that they would be placed next to the county courthouse, which is typically next to either the sheriff's office or the county clerk's office or both. We're looking at a purchase price of around $300,000, and that would facilitate the purchase of one per county at the very minimum, with some of our larger counties by population getting extra, and then some of our counties, such as Pike, with geographical distances, being able to locate several in that county as well. But before I made that purchase, I did want to bring it back to the board for a discussion and maybe a motion and a directive to be able to purchase that. If the board does have any concerns, I'd like to talk about them now if possible.
Hey, can I interject just for a second, Jared? As you all will see, the recommendations I made and the order of the governor are agnostic on this question. We didn't address it. We thought it appropriate to leave to the board, at least to discuss before it would come back to the governor and me. I'm personally dubious of the concept of drop boxes. However, I think I could accept that so long as they are placed at KSP locations or sheriff's offices. My sense is those would be more secure locations and more intimidating to fraudsters than other locations. My suggestion, my request would be that a vote to appropriate for this purpose be tabled until we meet again Monday or Tuesday, whenever we do. And in the meantime, we consult with the Sheriff's Association and see if they're willing to accept these drop boxes. I think that would be the best signaling, but also just subsequently the best place to put these. Jerry, could I ask you just to give a 30-second explanation to the public of why this is a good idea?
So for multiple reasons. One is we do not yet have word from the governor's office of whether or not we will be funded with money for return postage. So the primary reason, if we do not have return postage and we don't have a way for voters to drop their ballots off as opposed to putting them in mail without return postage provided by the state, we would probably not survive a poll tax challenge. We're trying to remove hurdles to voting, but also keep people safe. If the state does not have the funds and resources to be able to provide return postage, then we need to give an outlet for voters to be able to drop those off without necessarily having to place them in the mail. We would also, this would be a benefit in that last week prior to the election, in voters being able to submit them directly. If voters have concerns about placing their ballot in the mail so close to an election and they wanted to guarantee that their ballot would be accepted, they could return their ballot into one of the secure ballot boxes before 6 p.m. on election day, guaranteeing that the clerk would be able to count and cast that ballot. So, and like you said, I think that there are absolutely, I understand your concerns about these boxes. I will say that there are multiple states using the vendor that we're using, including Nebraska, which just recently purchased several, I want to say about 50 to 75 of these to service their county needs for the returning of their mail ballots. And so I think Georgia has also implemented this, installing ballot boxes for their voters as well. So I think we can do this safely and securely. To your concerns, I am totally okay with it being located in front of sheriff's offices. Sheriff's offices are usually centrally located within the county anyways. KSP offices would probably also work for that. I think you did mention that. So I'd be completely open to that. And if you need to table this until next week, I'm also okay with that because we can start the purchase process next week.
Can I ask what the attitude of the county clerks is on this subject?
I can say that we have drop boxes now currently in most locations that we are trusting for our citizens to drop off their renewals, their checks, a lot of different things that we are processing at this time. I don't know necessarily that we would need law enforcement involved. I know some locations are not, approximate to their sheriff's offices. My particular case, it wouldn't be a problem for me. And I also have cameras in my parking lot that would record deposits of ballots. But I don't know that would work for everyone.
Every county would be different. I
Every
believe.
county is different, yes.
And some sheriff's offices are on the second floor. In Franklin County, it's not downtown where the courthouse is.
Right.
Well, and I also would be a little bit concerned if we have these attached too closely to law enforcement, that it may it might intimidate some wrongdoing folks, but it may also intimidate average citizens. So I would just point that out as a possibility or a potential concern.
I think,
Right. I think
I would suggest a local county government office or location.
yes, and we would actually, the county clerks we're responsible for what's in those boxes. We accept those ballots. So the box should be connected to our office in some way. Yes.
Is there any more discussion that we have to have about this? It seems to me that it's fairly clear. Do you all need to wait till the next meeting, or can we go ahead and vote on it?
I am okay waiting. If you do want to table it for anyone to have any, concerns that they want to mull over the weekend, I am okay with it to wait until next week, unless you want to call for a vote now. But like I said, if it's tabled over the weekend, I'm still okay with that for timeline for purchase. And I think we'd be able to get that through relatively well.
I think we need to decide what the locations are going to be before we decide to spend $300,000 on buying these things. So I think we need to wait a few days.
And say, if Jared's okay with waiting, why don't we mull it over and try to think through if there's any questions that we haven't been able to think through in the time of this discussion, so that we're fully prepared when we do reassemble to make that decision.
That'll be fine. We'll table it until the next meeting, which ought to take place in just a few days. as I look down the list here of the agenda, we've got the county clerks. Renisa, are you got anything else you need to say?
No, I know, we have a lot of concerns, a lot about, purchasing the equipment, which I think Jared has gone over, our protection of our clerks, the PPE that would need to be involved, as far as like picking up ballots, any interaction with the public, the in-person voting, in a controlled way. So we would just need assurances, that help would be available for that. And that also, our smallest counties may have trouble with the staffing, leading up to this election day, because they're going to have a lot more work, a lot more things to do. And also this June, which we can't control that, it coincides with the 90-day extension that the governor gave our citizens in order to renew registrations. All of that will be expiring. So we will see an increased demand of our time and our resources during that month. So we want to make sure that, we have enough staff in our smallest offices particularly. So any help, consideration given there would be appreciated.
We're going to try to do the best we can. They're extraordinary circumstances, and I think, as we said when we opened this meeting, we want to, in particular, ensure the safety of our voters, of our citizens generally, of our poll workers, and certainly of our local officials, in particular our county clerks and other officials. With that, is there any other business? And if not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn and thank everybody.
Motion.
Second,
Motion by Sherry,
second.
second by Deanna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Appreciate
See
it.
you all
See you
soon.
next
Thank
week.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.